Good morning, guys. We are enjoying a hot cup of coffee here, and we are on a road trip to Malshesgard. More importantly, today we are talking about beginner tips for better photos with an iPhone. Let's go.
The road trip was great. We had a lot of fun. Unfortunately, the light was too harsh, so we could not shoot much. Talking about iPhone photography, to be honest, when it comes to iPhone, I am also a beginner. It's been a month I have been using an iPhone and I have learned some tips that have helped me to take better photos, and I want to share them with you in this video. We will start with some basic tips and then get to know some advanced tips as well. Very excited for this one, so without wasting any time, let's get started. The first tip is adjusting exposure. When you point out your iPhone on a particular subject, it's going to try its best to decide what the correct exposure is. Now, if you tap on any subject, it's going to give priority to that area and change the exposure accordingly. This is good for quick exposure adjustments, but for more control, you can tap on a subject and then move the slider up or down to increase or decrease the exposure. I don't prefer using this slider though. What I prefer is clicking on the arrow and then the plus minus icon and now changing the exposure. The reason I do this is, if I want to change the exposure just by a 1/3 or 2/3 of a stop, this gives me more information about what I am doing and have better control over the exposure. Sometimes I want to lock the focus and then change the exposure. To do that, tap on the subject and hold it till you see the AF/AE lock, which stands for autofocus auto exposure lock. Then you can adjust the exposure like we saw before. The next tip is viewing outside the frame. This is applicable for iPhones with multiple lenses. Suppose I'm using the tele lens. Outside the main frame, you will see an overlap of a slightly wider frame that you would get with a standard lens. If you're using the standard lens, you will see an overlap of what it would look like with a wide-angle lens. Now it is helpful sometimes and I understand why Apple has turned it on by default, but personally I find it distracting. I only want to focus on the main frame and nothing else outside it, so I prefer turning it off. You go to settings, camera, turn off the view outside the frame option. Is it necessary? No. Is it going to improve your photography? Probably not, but if you find it distracting like I do, well, you have the option to turn it off. The next step is daytime long exposure photography. Now generally, if you want to capture long exposures during daytime, you have to attach an ND filter. But you can also mimic the look of long exposure with the help of the live mode. Turn on the live mode if it's off by clicking here. Then when you take the photo, you can see the live text appearing for a second. Basically, it is taking multiple photos. You open the photo, swipe up, you can create a loop video or bounce, but what we are looking here is the last option, long exposure. This will combine the images and give you that long exposure image look. One thing I've noticed is the image gets cropped a bit once you convert it into a long exposure image, so I would recommend to shoot a bit wider than the original composition. You don't need a tripod, you don't need an ND filter. Obviously, you don't get the option to choose the shutter speed for the long exposure image, but still, this small hack comes pretty handy. Moving to the next tip is using and not using HDR. What is HDR? It is high dynamic range, meaning you have very bright highlights and very dark shadows, and it's very difficult to capture all the details in one single image. So the iPhone is going to take multiple images and combine it and try to give the best result possible. It works great most of the times, but sometimes I feel the results are a bit over processed. If you have smart HDR on, iPhone will automatically turn it on in most of the situations. What I prefer is turning it off so that when I'm taking a picture, I get the option to turn the HDR on or off manually. I won't recommend to turn off the HDR every time. The iPhones do a great job in computational photography, and I use HDR a lot for my landscape images. The next tip is about shooting in low light, but before we move to the next tip, it's time to thank the sponsors of the video, and that is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community and I've been using Skillshare from a long time. You want to learn photography, videography, editing, animation, Skillshare is the place to go. Recently, I joined this class on street photography by Trashhand where he talks about shooting portraits, architecture, shooting in low light, and also he shared his editing workflow. Now, I'm new to street photography, so this course was super useful. You want to learn something new, you want to upgrade your skills, I will definitely recommend Skillshare. For the first 1,000 people to click on the link in the description below, you get a free Skillshare trial membership. If you're taking a yearly subscription, monthly you're paying less than 800 Indian rupees or $10 US and you're getting unlimited access to all the classes. If you're interested, again, the link is in the description below. Moving to the next tip, and that is using night mode. Night mode is something you can't turn on by yourself. The iPhone will detect it's a low light situation and it will automatically turn it on. Basically, it's long exposure photography but with stabilization and a bit of software processing to give you the final result. Once the night mode is on, you can see it right here. Click there, it will be on auto. You can slide to the left and turn it off, which I won't recommend. This feature is amazing. You should keep it on auto when you're shooting handheld. For better night mode images, I prefer using a tripod and sliding it to the right to the max option available. It exposes for more amount of time depending on how dark the scene is and gives you a better image in low light. I have been using the max option even if I don't have a tripod and I still get pretty sharp images. If you don't have a tripod, I would recommend at least use some kind of support if you're getting shaky images. The last tip is for people who are more serious about photography, and that is using third-party applications. The stock application is great. The UI is pretty neat and easy to use, but it doesn't allow you to change all the settings. I have been using Android phones till now, and all the recent Android phones have Pro mode built in. As a photographer, I like to have manual control over my settings. The app I'm using in this video is the Lightroom application. It has a camera option built in, which is allowing me to change the shutter speed, ISO, white balance, and I can fine tune these settings as I like. As I said, this is not for everyone. Only if you're serious about photography, only if you want manual control over your settings, this is for you. 90% of the times, I'm using the stock application and I'm very happy with the results. But if you need that extra controls, you can use the third-party applications. There's some really good applications on the App Store and I'm planning to make a video about them, so stay tuned for that. I know I said that was the last tip, but here's a bonus tip. Disclaimer, this is only available to the 12 Pro and the 12 Pro Max users as of now, and that is using ProRAW. ProRAW is a big deal for me. Let me explain why. RAW files have more data compared to JPEG files, which is useful in post-processing. You can push the RAW file more in post-processing compared to the JPEG files and make it look better. You could shoot in RAW even before the help of third-party applications. Then the question is, Saurav, why is Apple ProRAW so exciting? When your iPhone takes an image, it does a lot of computational photography, which we even saw in this video, to give you the final result. RAW photos from third-party applications are simple raw images. There's no computational photography involved. Whereas with the ProRAW, you get the same processing, deep fusion, smart HDR, night mode, and you still get the benefits of shooting in RAW mode. Basically, you're getting the best of both the worlds. If you're going to post-process your images, I definitely recommend turning the ProRAW option on. Remember, the file size is huge, so don't turn it on every time if you don't need it. By default, it will be off even you have turned it on in the settings. So remember to check every time while you're taking the picture. That's it from this video, guys. I hope you people enjoyed the video and found this video useful. If you did, press the like button. New to the channel, you should definitely consider subscribing for more such content. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.